Hi everybody, it's Adrian Plus here,
Yes, and Bridget. Hello.
and welcome to number 277 of Sounding the Shallows.
And we're on holiday.
Yes,
we're in a
we've
little cottage.
Very nice holiday, haven't we?
Yeah, we're in East Sussex, and we're just very near to where we used to live, which has conjured up so many. I mean, we try to come about once a year, don't we? But even so,
It's full of stories, isn't it? 30 years of bringing the children up,
it is.
and the roads are, well, I say they're so familiar, but we keep disagreeing about where one road goes and where it ends and then begins. And
We do a bit.
But it's very familiar and very pretty, very sweet county Sussex.
Well,
Lovely.
and you know, one of the interesting things I think we've talked quite often about how you have to adjust to where your life is, and as you know from us having told you loads of times, things are different from us now that Adrian can't walk very well and uses a power chair, and we have a favourite place.
Although my brain is still as sharp as a razor.
Of course it is. But we have this favourite place that we had when our children it was a family favourite place, and I'm sure some people will know what that means. And this was called Butts Brow,
Oh,
and
yes.
it's right on top of the South Downs. And it's the most beautiful place, full of wind and breeze and sheep and amazing views. And we really, really thought that this was inaccessible now. And we went up there.
Because of the
Because of
difficulty of getting around.
because you have to get through a narrow gate and some stony bits, and then finally get up onto this hill, which is actually, it's quite a flat area, isn't it? Even though it's high up.
Well, it's fairly flat. It's a little undulating, but when you have these chairs, the terrain is an incredibly important thing to study, and you sit and look at it and think, am I going to actually get across this?
I know.
Don't worry, there isn't going to be some awful religious metaphor cropping up
No,
now.
not at all.
But actually, it worked, didn't it?
Well, we blessed the drought, if I'm honest, which I know we're not doing in all other ways. But the grass was so dry and therefore flat, and you were able to get up there, weren't you? And so it was the most wonderful reconnection with a whole area that had been important to us, but in a different way.
Yeah, it is different. I still felt a slight sadness, and one or two friends I knew who walked with me and us as well. We walked right over that hill to a village called Jevington, where there's a pub called the Eight Bells. Used to walk.
I hope you can
all
hear
the
the
way
dream
over
in
there.
us in Adrian's voice now.
It's not just it's a pub. It was just a pleasure to go there, and the Sussex pubs are very, very lovely places. A lot of them, aren't they? Anyway, there we are. Yeah, but it's been a really good week, and we're
One interesting
looking
little
forward to
thing
getting
is
back.
we wanted to send a postcard, didn't we, to our grandson, and we find that in a way we're not surprised. We hunted and hunted for nice postcards, and we found rude ones and cards, but no postcards. But it struck us that people don't write to each other in any way the same way. I mean, we sent photos, didn't we?
Yep.
On WhatsApp, we sent messages, but we didn't send postcards.
It's so
And
sad that we don't send rude postcards
I
anymore.
know, I
I
meant
never
sad.
did send rude postcards, actually.
Well, no.
But no, I agree though.
It was to do with sitting down at a table and writing something and sending it. And it really made us think, didn't it? We had an email this week from somebody who we hear from sometimes who really, really brought back. You'd mentioned about Andromeda, who we talked about last week, writing a letter to God.
Better explain. There's a book called the Horizontal Epistles of Andromeda Veal, which is about a little girl in hospital. Yeah, and I read a bit from that. So our friend wrote
Yeah,
about
he
that.
did. I mean, he said, and it was so nice, really. He said that he writes a letter to God every morning. I thought that's amazing.
It's a long
really.
letter.
I don't know how long. No, well, a page in a notebook.
Yeah.
Depends how big the notebook
No,
is.
that's interesting.
He said, I find it an encouragement to be able to share my hopes, worries and joys before I work. And I thought that was so nice to picture God getting a letter like our grandson getting a postcard. You know, getting something that's been really given. Because when you write a letter, it's work, isn't it? You have to write it.
Yeah, the difference between letters and postcards has become a bit of a hackneyed thing in a way, hasn't it? You know, people say, isn't it a shame that we don't have letters anymore, and isn't it that it's so quick to email? And I think we've said before that although that is true, if you're careful, you can make an email as warm and as interesting as you want to.
Yeah.
I think it's more that you don't have to. But I do miss the feeling of getting a letter in the post and seeing something on the mat.
Well, your
that
brother
you
actually
can tell
sends proper
immediately
letters, doesn't he?
is something written by somebody.
I mean,
so yeah.
I mean, and some people do still send letters, but I was thinking about this friend who writes to God, and I was thinking, I think quite a lot of my communication is more like a text than even an email or a letter. It's a sort of quick message.
When you're emailing, you mean?
No, when I'm talking to God.
Oh, when you're
as
talking to
opposed to
God.
writing a
Oh, I
letter
see.
to him. But
Yeah.
it did make me think, because I know there's a word, I think it's arrow prayers or something or other, and there's a place for them. But this idea that you write a letter, that you write down to God, dear God, or would you say dear God, or would you say dear Father, or what would
Me?
you say?
I think actually, there was an occasion when I was praying through letters every day, actually every morning, and I wrote a number of letters which were to God. Some of them about people we knew, we knew. Some about situations, and then actually sealed them up. I left a note on the front so that I'd know what it was about, and then use that. But I don't think I ever begun a letter, dear God, dear anybody, really, because I kind of felt, as he probably knew I was there, you've got to sort of get straight on with it. I don't know. I don't really know. But the whole thing made me think of lots of things. And, letters are fascinating things, the interpretation of them. For instance, the shortest book in the New Testament, is that Philemon, or is it? I think it is.
The shortest letter by Paul. Yeah, well, a lot of them he was talking to a whole church, and sometimes, as from what we can gather, one letter was intended to be read by several churches, so the letter would be passed on. Yeah. And it was all full of things that would help the church to grow. I was just going to say, apart from the little bits on the end of the letter, things like, I've left my coat behind,
that's
can
right,
you send it, and a few other. But you're talking about one particular letter, aren't you?
Well, he did write to individual people, actually, as well. And one of them was this fellow Philemon. And some people will know it well. He writes to say, more or less, do you remember that bloke who did you a very bad turn and ran off and left you, and he was a slave, and
of course, if he was a slave, he was owned.
He was property.
He had no rights. He was property. Yeah.
So Paul was saying, in a not very subtle way, actually, considering how subtle Paul was, saying, Don't even think about how much I've done for you. Don't worry about the relationship we have and how but I wonder, now that he's become a Christian, he's going. I want to send him back to you, and I want you to greet him and meet him like a brother.
He says, doesn't he? He's really looked after me. He's been
Yes,
wonderful.
yes,
He's an amazing person.
Yes.
Yeah.
So Philemon has to either put up or shut up, really, because that's what they're all about, is that kind of change in people. But it really both amuses and interests me, that because Paul is no longer speaking from a great height to anybody or using amazing metaphors like the body of the church and the clothes you wear, spiritual clothes you wear. He's saying, can you do me a favour? This fella needs some support. And
Well,
I
I think
love
he's,
the
no,
fact
no,
that
I
you
don't
were-
think he's saying, "Can you do me a favour?" I think he's saying, "You owe me one."
Well, yeah, that's what I just said.
Yes.
He's saying he's
Yeah.
actually saying, yes, you'll do what I've asked because I've been a very good friend to you, so do it.
Yes.
But yeah, and it made me think of all sorts of things, I must say.
And you ever think of a letter that's changed? I mean, we assume it totally changed the situation. Can you think of... And he's sending him back with the letter, isn't he?
Yeah,
He's sending Onesimus back
Yeah.
to Philemon with the letter.
yeah. Oh, that's right.
Can you
Lessons,
think
yeah.
of a time when you've written a letter? Because I can certainly think of one that I'll remind you of if you don't. When you've written a letter that is fully intended to bring about a change in a situation.
Yes, of course I can remember. And it was when we were living in Norfolk, and our oldest son was then at
was
his very
4.
first school.
He was 4, 4 and about 5 months, and because we were in the country, he had to be picked up by bus first thing in the morning and taken to school,
Yeah,
and
we
then
were in a
brought back by
very
bus at the end of
rural
the day. So it
area,
was a very
so
big.
The bus would
thing.
tromp around that bit of the county, picking up children to take to school, and Matt was one of them. So Matt actually enjoyed school. He liked his teacher, and he liked making things, and they had a making table and things, so he had a nice time there. But one day, what was the headmistress called?
Well, I'm not going to say her
Oh,
name,
no, all
but
right. Well,
anyway, he
the
came home
headmistress,
from the bus very
headmistress
upset,
was
didn't he?
was a very fierce lady.
Well,
I was quite
in a
frightened of her.
4-year-old. Well, I suppose so.
Well, she was... I mean, I remember when we went to a meeting at the school one day, and she talked to me for my statutory 13 seconds, and then said, "Did you not want any tea?" So I was dispatched. Anyway,
Dispatched for tea.
So anyway, back comes Matt with this this pain in his eyes, this worry in him, and we couldn't get him to say what it was. And after a couple of jam sandwiches and some
a
love,
lot of tears.
he told us what had happened. What had happened was that the headmistress at the beginning of the day, when all the children were gathered together, had said, "Some children are bringing money to school with them. We do not bring money to school with us.
And
And anyone caught with money will be in trouble with me." So Matt registers this incredibly important command. And he said at break time that day on the playground, he put his hand in his pocket suddenly and to his horror discovered a coin in there. I think it was a 2-shilling piece, but I'm not sure. So he pulled it out in horror to look at it, and it fell from his hand onto the playground and jingled on the playground with a deafening jingling sound. He didn't say that, but obviously that's how it seemed. And there were 2 big girls came along. And,
probably aged about 9 or 10.
well, exactly, yeah.
But big girls, yeah.
But with influence. And one of the big girls said, "Oh, you've got some money. The headmistress said you're not to bring any money to school. You're going to be in big trouble tomorrow because I'm going to tell her." So Matt was terrified of what was going to happen tomorrow. So what would we do? So I can't remember what your idea was.
Whatever my idea was, you certainly didn't tell me what your idea was.
No, I didn't.
But this was to do rather like Onesimus taking a letter to Philemon. This was on the same lines.
Well, sort of. It was a letter to the headmistress.
That he had to take.
He had to take it into the office and leave it there. And in it was a letter to her from me. And I had said, "Dear Mrs. whatever her name was, Matt found some money in his pocket yesterday, and someone saw it, and he's now very frightened and is worried about what is going to happen when he's at school today. He doesn't know I've written this letter, but I thought I'd just write to you and just challenge you to a duel." I said, "We will have a duel on the hillside overlooking the school. You can choose the weapons, and if you win, you can punish him for having money in the school. If I win, then you don't punish him for having money in the school." So Matt obediently does what he's told.
But he
gives the
doesn't know
letter
what's in the
no
letter.
idea what's in the letter, no. And so we waited with bated breath, or I did, to
yes,
see.
you have to keep remembering. I did not know.
No, I know you didn't
about
know. Well, you
this.
wouldn't have wanted to do it.
No, I wouldn't.
But anyway, he brought a letter back from the headmistress, and when we opened it, we found a letter which said, "Dear Mr. Plass, thank you for your letter. We had a lot of laughter in the staff room. That was good, wasn't it? A lot of laughter in the staff room this morning about you sending your letter. And it did remind me," she said, "that there are little people at the back of the assembly in the morning who I actually don't want to frighten out of their lives because they brought money into school. So thank you for that." And so actually in the end, it was pretty good.
It's quite. It's always stayed with us, that, hasn't it? The little ones at the back, because, you know, if you pick out from the Gospels the stern things that Jesus said, they were to the bullies. They were to the people that kept people down. They were to the they were to the people who were imposing rules in the wrong way, and they weren't intended for the little ones at the back, for the people who were failing at their lives, for the people who needed something more. But if you just pick those things out, it can look like that.
Well, certainly every now and then, I can remember in the Gospel, the disciples say to Jesus, after he's made a very strong comment. In fact, he actually says at one point, "My disciples know this, but nobody else does." And you can see them thinking, "Do we? What do we know?"
Yes.
But I think every now and then
Muttering.
they must have said to him, "Look, we're not going to make it. We're not up to this." But we still meet people all the time,
Who are the little ones?
not being specifically bullied, exactly, but they've been taught to fear God in an unhealthy way, to be concerned that if he gets cross with you, it's a terribly bad thing. Well, it might be, but the other side of the message is really undervalued, which is the whole salvation thing is his idea. The motivation for it is love. It's not in order to make people feel silly,
miserable
or
and
wrong.
guilty,
No, exactly.
and useless, and
No.
as though they don't match up to some ideal, as though they know they've jingled coins on the pavement, if you like, and they're just waiting for the big girls, or in other words, for God to come and tell them off, or the headmistress tell them off. You know, it is, yeah. But I mean, that was one example, going back to letters, of a letter that really changed things. And do you remember, after my parents had died, we found these letters that my dad had written to my mum. He was such a restrained man. You know, he found it almost impossible to use words like love, and yet his letters were full of it, because far away and missing my mum,
He was in
could
Italy, wasn't he?
communicate. Yeah, he could communicate things that there was a softness and sweetness that meant an awful lot to me. Whether I should have read these letters or not, I don't know, but it meant so much to me. And sometimes in a letter, you can say things that you can't face to face put into words, can't you? Do you think that's true?
Well, yes, absolutely, because you don't have to be there. Partly, I mean, you are both separated and close as the person picks the letter up. You can be in Italy and they can be in England, and the things you would find difficult to say, perhaps face to face, you have a choice. You can either write it down and send it, or not, and that
Yes, that's right.
applies
That's
to
right.
all communications, really.
And
doesn't
also,
it?
you're on your own when you're writing it, so you're not with the person, which sometimes can be easier, because so many things get tangled up when you're trying to put things into words. Sometimes, I don't mean you particularly, because you're rather good with words, but for a lot of us, it can be a stumbling thing. But it does involve a deep breath, picking up a pen, finding the paper, and then when you've done it, finding an envelope, finding a stamp, finding a postbox. It involves doing something, doesn't it?
And whether it's a letter or an email or I don't think what else there is, whatever, if you want to communicate, it's always worth just stopping your thinking for a moment to look at what thoughts are flying past you as you think of the person you're communicating with, and to try to add something that is a personal thing, because sometimes communication can seem very terse and probably quite unconsciously very almost cold.
But the only way I might contradict that, yes, I absolutely agree, you know I do, but if you're writing a letter to God,
Yes.
maybe it's a good idea not to edit it. You're not actually physically sending it. God is not going to fall to pieces because of something you've said. And I know many of us edit our prayers even as we're saying them. We cross things out. If we had Tipex in the old days, we would use it. You know, I didn't really mean that, God. I know you're wonderful. I know you're amazing. I know you can do all things. It's just me being silly. So there's those sort of letters as well. The ones where you need to pour out.
Really, that's what I meant. I think that you let out the things that are important to you, that will make a real contact, and people will say, "Oh, this is different."
Yeah,
you know,
that's
someone's talking to me through this, and whether you can do that better with pieces of paper you write on, I don't know, but. Certainly communication generally, when I look at my attempts to write messages on a smallish phone, my bungled attempts. And
on that note, I
believe
discovered
some of the
recently
things
that Dickens wrote his novels with a quill pen.
Yeah.
So if we're struggling
right,
to write
yeah.
a letter, just think of the length of novel. If this, as I think it is true, that Dickens wrote those incredibly long books
Well, that is
with a
true.
quill pen.
That is true. And also he wrote down, interestingly, the names of his characters. Loads of different ideas about what the name of, for instance, David Copperfield would be. So with his quill pen, he would write David Smith, David something, William something, until he found the one that in the end gives us that famous title, David Copperfield.
And nothing more amazing than Uriah Heep. I mean, that's the name of all names. But just coming back to letters, it would be lovely to hear if anybody has had a letter, written a letter that's changed something, or how they go about writing, if they were going to write to God, or any of these
maybe
things.
a letter that really meant something special
Yeah.
to you. It'd be
Yeah.
interesting to hear about that. Yeah.
And we'll speak to you next week when we're back home.
Yes, we'll be back home in sunny Durham.
Well, I think it's raining at the moment, actually, but there you go.
Bye.
Bye-bye.